Today, it's my pleasure to invite Nissan to the Brainforest Café. He has an interesting life. He started his career as a medical doctor and began his work as a general practitioner in an urban community clinic system. He then specialized in ophthalmology and practiced in a small town for 30 years. He became dissatisfied working strictly on the physical level and received training in gestalt psychotherapy and had a small private practice. He became interested in the field of natural vision improvement, which combined his interest in vision with present moment embodied presence. A reading from a tarot card, psychic, suggested the need for working in and with the spiritual realm to facilitate the natural vision work, and suggested there were some gifts for him in shamanism. His wife had had a powerful experience in a ceremony with Don Jose Campos and encouraged him to explore ayahuasca as a method to open himself spiritually. He had two very different but powerful experiences with Don Jose and participated in a plant dieta in the Amazon in 2005 with Don Jose. He received what he interpreted as an initiatory experience and felt called to be trained as a vegetalista. He embarked on the training under Don Jose and Don Lucho's guidance and began leading ceremonies in the U.S. in 2009, and in 2011 began leading plant dietas in the Amazon. He continues to lead ceremonies in various locations in the U.S. and occasionally Canada, and also leads dietas in the Amazon twice a year. So, Nissan, welcome to the Brainforest Café.
Thanks for inviting me, Dennis.
There you are. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Did I get anything egregiously wrong in that introduction?
No, I think I wrote all that, so it should be right.
Okay, so that's the biography. Tell me a bit about your life's journey, a little more detail than in the introduction. What led you to this place in life where you felt compelled to called to become a vegetalista, which I assume is far outside your normal cultural background or interests. So you are coming to this not as an indigenous person, although I don't want to assume anything, but you're coming to it as, well, as I say sometimes, we're all indigenous to Earth.
Right.
You know. So tell me your story, Nissan.
Well, it's kind of hard to know how far back to go, but I was raised as a Reformed Jewish, in the Reformed Jewish tradition, and pretty much hated every second I was in Hebrew school, and was a rebel there. I spent a lot of time out in the hallway, getting kicked out of class. So, um,
Always a good sign, right? You were an edge pusher. I take that as a good sign.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. Yeah, I was a top student in the regular school, so it was an interesting experience being, the bad kid in Hebrew school. But it wasn't for me. And the name I use, in ceremony, Nissan, happened to be the name that was given to me in Hebrew school. It's a Hebrew month, where it's the month of celebration of miracles. It's when the Seder occurs.
Uh-huh.
So I was really turned off to religion and I think spirituality altogether, early on. Uh, and but started working with plant medicines and synthetic medicines, and uh, I was always surprised how much I learned about myself and the world, working with these medicines. It was intriguing. Um, and I think in medical schools when I did most of my experimentation with those kind of medicines. I ended up
What kind of medicines? Synthetic?
a lot of
Pellets?
cannabis and MDA. Do you remember MDA?
I do. I'm old enough to remember MDA.
Yeah. I had some big experiences with that.
Okay.
I got into medical school, and I was interested in the concept of holism, taking care of the whole person, body, emotions, spiritual, the spirit of the person. And so I went into family medicine, thinking that's where I'd find it. And I don't know, maybe I wasn't at the greatest program, but I was pretty disillusioned. Mostly what I was doing was writing prescriptions for medicine that I didn't feel good about. The patients didn't feel good about taking them. And I didn't even feel like I was taking very good care of the physical body, much less anything else. But it was a concept that I embraced, um, holistic medicine, but I didn't find it in family medicine. Um,
You were interested in holistic medicine, but the medicine you were practicing was anything but holistic, so you were disillusioned. May I ask you where you were studying, what institution or
I was at the University of California in San Diego.
okay, okay,
Uh, yeah, really, I felt like my field of mastery was colds.
okay,
The stuff that went away on its own. Um, and everything else was better taken care of by the specialists. So anyhow, I went in a completely different direction. I went into ophthalmology, and I just wanted to fix things with my hands. I didn't want to write prescriptions for medicines. I just wanted to fix things with my hands, um, and that felt like it was pretty much on track. But I never really felt like this is why I came to Earth to be an eye doctor. But it was pretty good. I helped a lot of people, and um, had a nice practice in there. But eventually, I became disillusioned again. That just working on the physical level just didn't seem to be where I was at. So I got trained along with my wife in gestalt psychotherapy.
I
With
see.
the the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland, which was one of the older schools of Gestalt medicine. My wife, who in the book I call Lucy, had already been a practicing Gestalt therapist, but hadn't had the formal training. So together we got trained, and the part that really excited me was body centered uh,
Mhm.
therapy. They're bringing the body, fully into uh, the therapeutic field, and often we would work without words, just with the body, and it really felt like that was getting somewhere. That was really getting somewhere. Um, so I had some powerful experiences myself with that, and with others as well. Um, and uh, and then eventually I found this field of natural vision improvement, which not many people know about. It's not well thought of by the medical establishment. Um, And people go in a lot of different directions with that. Many people do get into the eye exercises to lessen our dependence on glasses. Um, but really, what excited me was the work of Rosemary Gadam Gordon. She did this work called "Seeing from the Core." It was really about, well, she used the phrase being at home behind the eyes, being really visually present. Um, And it seemed like that combined my interest in vision with, with my interest in present moment experiences. Gestalt therapy being very present moment oriented. And
Right.
like most of my life, I've been looking for ways to increase the percentage of time that I'm in the present moment. Um, uh, and so I started doing experiential workshops with this, guiding others to to basically be relaxed in the body, to be breathing and being really at home behind their eyes. And using the eyes as strictly receptive organs, not going out and grasping for images. People with visual problems often don't use the eyes in a very relaxed way. They're straining to try to see, and this was the opposite of that.
Right. I can speak to that personally because I've had a lot of issues with my eyes all my life. I was severely myopic as a kid, so I had big, thick glasses back in those days when that was the solution to that. And then that I've had I have to shout out to ophthalmology and the skill of ophthalmologists, which I respect greatly because it's very specialized. And I've had two detached retinas in my life and all kinds of things like that. And if it was not for the high tech medicine, I would be blind today. Now I'm only partly blind. I actually can see pretty well. Uh, but I have lots of issues with vision, and so I'm grateful that for the high tech medicine that was able to, correct these essentially emergency situations as you know, when a retina detaches, it's an emergency. It has to be dealt with immediately. So just saying, I have known ophthalmologists and respect ophthalmologists, so you were in a good field, but we could move on. It was not satisfying for you,
Yeah. Well,
or it was, and then it wasn't, perhaps.
could we just stay with you just a little bit about your eyes?
Sure.
Yeah. I didn't know that, Dennis, that you had retinal detachments and you had one in each eye?
Yes, at different times. I had one in 2000, no, 2001, and then another one in the right eye. We got to the doctor in time, and he was able to correct it. As far as I know, it was perfect surgery. And the second time, I did not get to the doctor quite in time. So, although I eventually got the operation, she was not, it was a different doctor, completely crazy circumstances, which I won't go into. But basically, she was not able to completely uh, reattach the retina, restore it. So in my left eye, I have basically no peripheral vision, which makes for some interesting moments on the freeway and things like that. But otherwise, I'm functional. I can see out of both eyes.
Oh my
They
God.
give me a lot of trouble. You know.
Yeah. Well, nearsightedness is a um, probably multifactorial, um, you know, condition, and often people have a strong family history of high nearsightedness. Do you?
Yes, yes and no. Interestingly, well, both my brother and I were very myopic, and if there's a genetic component, it didn't come from my father because my father prided himself on how excellent his vision was right up until the moment that he died. He had excellent vision. He was a pilot, so he was very functional. My mother was not severely nearsighted as far as I know, but she was nearsighted. And somehow both my brother and I, you know, we just got that we just got the wrong genes, I guess, because he was myopic and I was even more myopic back in childhood. So, of course, all this could be corrected with glasses and eventually with contact lenses. I never got along well with contact lenses. They were just too uncomfortable, but I do fine with glasses, and I I'm not a hazard, to most people most of the time, although, like I say, there are moments on the freeway that are a little dicey sometimes, but, you adapt. One adapts.
Right. Mm.
You know.
Well, that's one of the, this is a generalization, that interested me, in this natural vision world was that, nearsightedness, can be like a reaction or an adaptation to fear, and farsightedness, to, anger. I mean, this is just a generalization.
Mm.
So I started when I was practicing ophthalmology. I just started asking the patients, "What was going on with you and your family when you got your first pair of glasses?" And I was amazed how many people said something to the effect of, "Well, we moved around a lot, and we moved to a new place, and I was a new kid in school, and I was kind of shy, and I spent a lot of time in my room, and my world kind of came in, as did my vision." And so I'm just curious what was going on when you got your first pair of glasses.
Well, it was so long ago, I hardly remember. I mean, I was not both Terrence and I got our glasses really early, so I must have been 6 or maybe even 5 when I got my first pair of glasses.
Yeah,
So my memory of those days, I mean, it was not my childhood was not particularly stressful. I didn't feel that it was. There may have been a fear component because my brother was 4 years older than I was, and he was, very invested in torturing me, psychologically and physically, as big brothers will do. So there was certainly an element of fear in my life, uh, but not his, because he was the older one. He was the dominant one. I don't know what his excuse was, but maybe fear was a factor here.
yeah,
We never really connected the vision problems with fear, but,
yeah,
one I mean, now that you mention it, it's possible.
yeah.
And the idea of being behind your eyes, I think that's a very interesting concept, you
Yeah, yeah,
because particularly when you relate to psychedelics, because psychedelics, that's where the action is, right? Behind the eyelids is where it's going on, the internal movie of, visions and hallucinations and basically everything else, so that's an interesting idea.
yeah, yeah. Well, yes, about that time, I had a basically a psychic reading from a friend who used the tarot as a basis of her
Mhm.
uh, reading, and then she'd go on from there. And she said to do this natural vision work that you're proposing, you're going to need to work in the spiritual realm in a way that you're not familiar with. And I think she mentioned a few things, but I remember her saying you should check out shamanism. I think there's something there for you. Um, so although I had tried ayahuasca in the mid '90s, there were two vegetalistas from Peru coming to the area near where I lived. Christina Mendoza and Jorge Gonzalez. They had been coming there for years, and I got in just right at the end, and it was, people had prepared me for like, oh, you're gonna hear screaming and crying and people throwing up, but it was like a morgue in there, other than like they were singing the same song for 4 hours, and I didn't feel the medicine at all. I drank 2 cups of this pond water stuff, and yeah, and it didn't seem like anything was happening in the room. And, you know, I didn't know at the time that that's unusual. It isn't unusual for a couple people not to have much going on, but for the whole room, that's unusual. So I think their medicine was kinda had
I
me
think
see
it
shelf
sounds
life.
like weak medicine.
Yeah,
Surprises me, the one name you mentioned, Christina Mendoza, whom I haven't met, but she has a very good reputation.
very good.
I don't know about the other gentleman that she worked with, but she's well respected in this field. So I'd be surprised if her medicine was weak, but it's
She
possibly
would
someone else there that you never know, where it came from really.
Right. I well, she seemed like a teenager at that time. She was quite young. Um,
Right, right.
and so is probably, the other person's, medicine.
Very much her own, vegetalista, she got her own chops, if you will, and did dietas and all that. Uh,
Absolutely, yeah.
so how did you meet, Don Jose? I know Don Jose, fairly well. I've sat ceremony with him a few times, and, he's been to the States, I've met him in Peru several times, and many people I know. Another figure in this area who is, the real deal in a sense. He's a real shaman, a real vegetalista. There's nothing charlatan about this man. He's come by his knowledge and his skills, honestly, by doing the dieta, by doing the training and so on. And that's the tradition, or he was essentially your maestro. He was your teacher, your primary teacher?
Well, and, Don Lucho, who had been, Jose's kinda business partner, initially, so the 2 of them have been my teachers and continue to be my teachers and friends. So I got to work with Jose in 2005. My wife had actually, in 2004, ended up in a ceremony in a unusual way that a person in our life that had done a little work for us, wasn't really a close friend, um, came back from a dieta in Peru and said, Lucy, it was very strange that in my visions during the ceremony, I kept seeing you, um, sitting here doing the medicine with us. And
Hmm,
Lucy didn't know anything about this medicine, but the next time Jose came to the United States, she had a very powerful experience with him, and she said, you know, this medicine is known to open one spiritually. Maybe you want to check it out. Maybe all ayahuasca isn't the same. Maybe it matters who made it and who's leading the ceremony. And so that's why I went, so that I could do this natural vision work. But
right,
my first experience with a dentist was, I was really gifted with, a classic entheogenic experience, where this concept that I had already embraced, that, I guess you call it pantheism, that everything is God in a different form. I had an experience of that. And, as you know, because you've worked with the medicine, the medicine can give you a real lived experience of something that you previously had just really held as a concept or an idea.
right.
It was a very, very profound, kind of paradigm shifting experience. And I think at some point, even right then, I went, wow, what could be more powerful than holding space for people to have these very profound experiences? Um, well, I guess I'll tell this story. So I did a Friday night and a Sunday night, and we were told not to have sex for 3 days, but I thought that was kind of optional. So on Saturday,
You broke the rules.
I broke the rule, which I don't think that the problem was so much I broke the rule, but I felt really guilty about it. And so I came into Sunday feeling really guilty. Um, and and Dennis, I went into a hell zone. I mean, I didn't really believe in the devil, but I was like down in what seemed like hell. And I mean, blood was dripping from the walls, and at one point, horns popped out of my head, and a tail, and claws, and
You should have listened, right? You should have listened.
to make matters worse, I thought, well, this isn't right. I should be, flying with the angels like the previous night. So I took another full cup. Back then, Jose gave everyone, if you came up for medicine, you got a whole shot glass. If you came up for any more medicine, you got a whole shot glass. So, uh, so that just, increased, the hell that I was in. And my particular hell was that every issue or insecurity I'd ever had in my life just came back and was just in my face, and I couldn't turn away. And and I was just beating myself up, for being such a flawed human being. And it was horrible. It was really horrible. And it didn't resolve at the end of the ceremony. I was just, laying there in a puddle, and no one could really console me. Uh, and it was really a horrible night. And back then, Jose's pre-ceremony talk was about 1 minute long. He'd say, the ceremony is going to last for 4 or 5 hours. Don't talk to each other. Don't touch each other. There'll be multiple servings of medicine. But he didn't mention that, if you're in a bad place, it's going to go away. You're gonna get your normal state of consciousness back. And I was afraid that I had messed my mind up forever with this horrible jungle juice, and that I was gonna need to be
Always
hospitalized.
concerned, right, when that happens. But that's part of the problem. That's part of the process of healing, I mean, to go through these. Well, the classic shamanic sort of trope or theme is in shamanism, the shaman becomes torn apart, right? Completely destroyed. Literally, I mean, then visions of being dismembered and all of that. Those are very common in shamanism, and that's part of the initiatory process. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but I mean, that's what ayahuasca does, and to a certain extent, other psychedelics as well. I mean, if you want to put it in the language of neuroscience or the contemporary way of looking at this, which I in no way say is an adequate way to look at it, but they talk about the default mode network.
Right.
And, psychedelics, you're deliberately disabling the default mode network. That's the whole point. You're disabling all these habitual behaviors and thought patterns that we inhabit all the time so that we can function. You're going to a place where you're dropping all that, and you have to be open to whatever happens. It's really about surrender, as you know, surrender to the medicine. And the medicine is not always kind, and in your case, in this particular case, it was not kind to you, but there was a reason for it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, well put. So, in the sharing circle the next day, uh, I shared with the group and Jose, what my experience was, and how I thought I was being punished by ayahuasca for having had sex um, the night before. And Jose normally would just kind of sit there falling asleep. He thinks that people in our part of the world talk way too much about themselves, and they're not in the present moment. And I think he's on to something here. Um, but he kind of everything had to be go through an interpreter, so it was very tedious. But he really kind of woke up, and here I'm crying and telling him this, and he's looking at me, he's laughing, and I couldn't do it. I was incredulous, like how could this guy be so callous that I had like the worst night of my life, and he's laughing. And then when I said, I think that the punishment was a little excessive, he like laughed so hard he fell off his chair. Um, I wanted to punch him. And then he looked at me, and I didn't speak Spanish back then, but it seemed like I was understanding him as he was speaking Spanish. He said, everyone has a hell zone. Everyone has this place, and it's good to go down there. He said, yeah, I've been drinking for 30 years and I still go to that place, but I go with curiosity to see like, okay, what issues are still there? And I know I'm going to come out of it. And um, so that was a little helpful, but still I needed a little, I had to go to a therapist just one time. And she was quite helpful. One of the things that was most distressing that that second night, Dennis, was that I felt so alone. The previous night I was just surrounded by spirit. They were all over the place. And in that hell zone, I was just alone. And I thought I had, lost my privilege to ever be in communication with the spiritual realm because I had had sex. Um, and and she just put out the possibility that maybe spirit is always there. It's just you cut yourself off. You didn't think you deserved it. And I think that was it. And that was all I really needed.
Closer to what it is. Yeah. The spirits, whatever you want to, if that's how you want to characterize it, they do not abandon a person, but they might let you think they've abandoned you.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's part of a necessary perception. And then as you move through the experience and as you come down and as you integrate it, you realize, well, they were always there. This was kind of a test, I mean, and I think as a physician, you more than most people, although maybe everybody realizes this, but healing involves pain. Very often it involves pain, and the pain can be a therapeutic thing. It can be cleansing, and that's sometimes it's not. But I think in a lot of ways, especially spiritual pain or distress, is a cleansing process, because you're deliberately entering into a place where everything you thought you knew is open to question and none of it's valid anymore. So you have to kind of reforge your worldview to a certain extent and reconstruct it. But the point is, if you do that, you're stronger afterwards. So it is a cleansing. It is a reorganization uh, of this default mode network, which I think is very, I don't like the term, but it's a reconstruction kind of your worldview. Uh, and it's like, you're if you're a building, you're getting run down, things are going wrong, the plumbing doesn't work, there are leaks in the roof and this sort of thing. But these experiences give you a chance to get out the hammer and nails and kind of put yourself back together in a way that's stronger than you went into it. And then with that, knowing that, having that power, you're a better healer for other people. And that's clearly a path that you've gone down. You've learned the dietas and the caros and the entire uh, procedures of vegetalismo. So you have these tools now and you're able to help yourself and other people.
Yeah. Well put about ayahuasca and pain. And I think in my case, it was extremely humbling as well. I thought I was a pretty experienced psychonaut, could handle pretty much everything. I thought I had, was knew my issues, had done work on them, and that, I was pretty together. But that experience was extremely humbling. I realized, I had done some work on a lot of things, but there was still lots to do, and I wasn't as together as I thought I was. And I came out of that much humbler. I'm still working on that one, but being a physician, it's easy to be arrogant, and so even my wife said, "Wow, you are a much better husband now." Prior to that, would, if I had messed up or done something stupid or hurtful, I kind of laugh it off. I blame someone else and not really own it. And afterwards, after that experience, it was a lot easier to say, "Wow, I was a jerk. I'm sorry. You're right." And so,
And
uh,
so uh, it forces you, to look in a mirror in a way, and you may not like what you see. You may not, some of the warts and scars that you see may not be pleasant to gaze upon. I often say about ayahuasca, it does have this feminine character to it. It's a projection, of course, but it's really like talking to your wise old grandmother or somebody, a very wise feminine wisdom, but she won't hesitate to hit you upside the head if that's what you need, and sometimes we all need that, and so that's a gift in a certain sense. I mean, she'll hit you upside the head, but it comes from a place of compassion,
Right.
in the same way that, maybe your real grandmother is gonna say, "Well, I'll whip the hell out of it, but it's really for your own good."
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the way it works.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
afterwards, you realize, "Yeah, I needed that. That was something I needed."
Yeah. So Dennis, years ago, I had a participant in the jungle in a dieta, and he felt like he was getting beat up night after night. And he told me one night he went in and he was just pleading with the medicine. He said, ayahuasca, please, please be gentle with me." And when it came on, spirit said, "Gentle? You want gentle? See other guys. We're the truth guys."
I see.
Right.
Right.
Right. But as it seems like this, if I mean, I talk about plant spirits, but I don't actually know, it's just a term, but there's some consciousness, some intelligence, that we seem to be working with as well that I call plant spirits. And uh it has a zillion different faces, and a lot of them are that warm, loving, compassionate grandmother, but can come in, like a wrecking ball as well. And
Absolutely. And and sometimes even in the same session, other times not. I mean, some sessions are like pure hell realms, hell journeys like you had. Other times, it's all sweetness and light, happy hippies, fuzzy bunnies. Not
Right.
with ayahuasca, but with some psychedelics. But
Yeah.
these are necessary uh processes that you have to deal with. It's part of the process of evolution into the vegetalismo state, or it's part of the learning process.
Right.
If you hadn't experienced these painful experiences, you would not be able to help other people. You
Right.
you have I mean, which I think in some ways makes it a little different, actually quite a bit different from what we call conventional medicine, because there's
Yeah.
no expectation that the doctor has to be undergo pain in order to heal their patients. But maybe they should. Maybe they should have to experience that. I think there are doctors who, for example, oncologists who themselves get cancer, they can appreciate from that experience much more what their own patients are going through, and I think it makes them better healers. It makes them, what it comes down to is it's all about empathy. It's all about, if you can feel another's pain, that's a process of stepping outside your own pain and your own reference pain, and feeling it from that person's perspective. And in this current world, with all the vitriol and that's going on, at least in the social media sphere of the dialogue, we need more empathy. I mean, empathy is a good thing. There's not enough of it.
Totally agree. And Dennis, every experience I've had as a patient, um, I think deepened my ability to be a compassionate doctor as well, because it's really being different. It's quite a different experience being at the other end of the scalpel, at the pointy end.
Yeah,
The handle end is, it's a different experience, yeah, and being vulnerable, not to, uh, you know, uh, uh, being a patient is a very vulnerable experience, um, and, so I think it's good for the doctors to experience being quite vulnerable as well.
I think so, at least to appreciate what their patients may be going through. I mean, in medicine is, as it's conventionally practiced, is very much, although I'm not a doctor, so I can't speak personally, but it seems to me that in conventional practice, it's very much at arm's length. It's like you're the patient, I'm the healer, and I'm transmitting this energy to you through my skills or whatever manipulation it is, but there's no reciprocal exchange. In
Right.
shamanism and the kinds of therapies that you're involved with, there is a two-way exchange, you know? I mean, the vegetalista can take on these energies, and that's part of the healing process. I mean, they're able to effectively, uh, they can take this burden. I think there's a folk song that says something like, pack up your sorrows and give them all to me."
Yeah.
That's kind of the mantra for shamanism in a certain way.
Yeah, so I had those 2 ceremonies, and then, I went down to the jungle. I think it was the organizer that, really impressed me when she said that, out of all her different experiences in life, the ones that she had in the jungle on Dieta were the most profound. Um, and so that led me to going into the jungle in 2005. Um, so that experience that I had that I interpret as being an initiation was this that Jose would ask at the beginning of the ceremony who would like to have an opportunity to sing a song or play an instrument. So I raised my hand, but I didn't actually have a song but I wanted to contribute something. So when my turn came, he came up to me and gave me the shakapa. You
Mhm.
know what shakapa is? That leaf rattle made from the shakapa palm.
Yep, yep.
So I just shook it and I had, a few notes that I would alternate between and I was shaking the shakapa. It felt like it was shaking me. It was pretty intense. And when I was done singing, I laid down and I expected Jose would come and retrieve his shakapa, but he was doing something with a maraca or drum or something. And so I just held it as I was laying there. And then I had this experience of this kind of spirit being coming from the left and it was instructing me to take the handle end of it and touch various places on my body. And
Mm.
it said, um, "You've been initiated. You were a keeper of the light." And that was all it said. And then it was gone. And I was very perplexed. What does that mean? And did that really happen? So as I started coming down in the ceremony, I thought to myself, well, how ridiculous. I came to the jungle thinking that something mystical and magical was going to happen. And I just fabricated a, hallucination. And then that voice in my head came back, was kind of loud and a little angry, saying, "You were initiated. Remember that." Um,
Right. You came, you had the expectation, and it happened, but not in the way you thought it was going to happen,
all right.
which is always how it presents itself,
Right.
in a certain way. So you, you went to South America several times and you did many dietas. What was your experience of those dietas? Why did you do those, and what did you learn from these teacher plants that you were I assume you were doing it a traditional way, you were in isolation, you were working with these plants with or without ayahuasca. What did you learn from this? What did you learn about yourself and these teacher plants?
Right. Well, when I shared with Jose that I had had this experience, he was very nonplussed. He said, "Oh, big deal." He says, "Many people, keepers of the light. What are you going to do with it?" And I said, "Well, I want to do this work. I want to be a vegetalista." And he said, "Oh God, why would you want to do that? You're already a medical doctor. You're helping people." And I said, "Well, just working on the physical level doesn't interest me anymore. I want to do this." And he kept talking me out of it. And I said, I'd like to study under you, be your student." And he said, "I don't take students." He said, "That's not how it works in this." He said, "I don't decide if it's work for you. The plants decide, the plant spirits decide. And one never knows if they're interested in having you assist them. Um, and one just needs to jump in and, come down to the jungle, at least every 6 months and work with different plants." He said, "You got to do your personal work first and then see what happens." Um, and I said, "Well, isn't there a book that I could read?" I'm used to, having a curriculum, and a teacher, that will test me at the end to make sure I know it. He said, "No, there's no books. It's all experiential. And this is how it's done." And so I felt like I was learning it. I learned enough about myself that even if the plant spirits didn't want me to in that role, it was still worthwhile. So I started coming down every 6 months, and I'd work with different plants. And um, he said the plants will do 90% of the teaching, and someone in physical form like me, and I asked Don Lucho if he would be on my team as well. They'll do the 10%, but that the plants do 90%. Um, I don't know if those figures are exactly right, but I think that the in the dietas, I believe that the plant spirits taught me the essence of this work, but the form of it, like how to do a curacion, an individual healing over someone. Don Jose taught me that. Uh, you know, and teach you how to make the medicine, about dosage and things like that. Um, so, when you ask me what did I learn from from doing all those dietas, that's a big question. But I would say that in general, uh, the medicine is about. One time it
Well, let me ask you this: Were there you did dieta with a variety of plants? Were there certain plants that you were drawn to that you seem to have a more solid connection with? Other plants that you worked with didn't really resonate with you that way? Was there a sorting out process in this where you throughout these experiences, you came to rely on particular plant medicines, plant teachers, other than ayahuasca, of course, which was kind of a constant. But some of these other teachers, were there ones that you worked with and got the message that, yes, this is an ally, this is someone, something, an entity, say, that I can rely on, and this other one over here, that's not really my thing. It doesn't have the right vibe or whatever. Did you find that in this variety of plant medicines that you worked with over time?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and that's very true. I often talk about the plants as kind of being like human beings. Like, you can be introduced to a perfectly wonderful human being, but you just don't really have the chemistry. And I feel like it's the same way with the plants. Um, well, one of my favorite plants is Shihahuaco. And did you ever see a Shihahuaco tree?
Uh, Not under that name. Do you happen to know what the scientific name is?
I don't, but it's the biggest tree in the part of the jungle where I go. It's one of those massive trees that, the roots, in a way start way up high and like buttresses, they come
Sounds
down.
like it was probably Saiba pentandra, possibly one of the tallest, biggest trees in the Amazon.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it is a plant teacher, and it's the tree that when you're on the river and you look out over the jungle, it's mostly flat, but then there are these enormous trees, much bigger than anything else, standing above the canopy. And those are definitely Ceiba pentandra, uh, or also called kapok is another term for them. And those are used as plant medicines.
Well, I think that one is Lupuna Blanca. That's also a massive tree.
That could be it too. Right. Right.
Well, um, I'll just tell you a little bit about my experience with Shihahuaco and its relationship to its name, actually. And that name is not Spanish; it's from some tribal language. Um, so, like many of the plants that we die with, we work with the bark. So some bark is scraped off and boiled, and we drink that. And so, in the dieta with Shihahuaco, I had, I think, the most profound healing experience maybe of my life, where it really was kind of healing this wounded inner child. It was related to a wound I had had with my father, who wasn't very present for me, in my life early on, at least, and a very, very healing experience. And after that experience, I felt more whole, WHOLE, than I ever had in my life. And I also received an Ikaro in a different ceremony where I just saw the spirit being above me, and it said, "I'm teaching you a song, pay attention." And it came back 3 or 4 times in that ceremony to make sure I had it. Um, and and Jose had said something about the name that was significant. And not that long ago, I found out that the name Shiwa of Shihahuaco means a hole, Hole. And the center of that tree, if it's cut down or blows over, there's a hole in the center of it.
Mhm.
That's where it the name comes from. And isn't it interesting that the tree that has a hole in it seems to be able to find out the holes that we have inside of us and fill them up and help us feel whole. WH.
Hole, in effect.
Yeah.
WHOLE. You find the holes and it plugs them
Right.
up. No,
Right.
that sounds like that is a powerful plant ally for you. Do you continue to work with that one?
Well, it's not so much personally, Dennis, although I do have a tincture that has a little bit that now and then I drink, but it's one of the plants that I serve in the participants in the dieta. Um, uh, I use my intuition and questions that they answer in a online questionnaire before coming in a dieta, um, and uh, and that's one of my favorites to serve people.
Mhm.
So I think each vegetalista has like a main team, that he or she works well with, and so Shihahuaco is one of them. Lupuna Blanca is another one that I love working with. That's a very big tree. I think that's the kapok that you were talking about, um, and that's known to love teaching human beings. So As you probably know, certain trees are the master teacher plants, and they have the ability to interact with human consciousness. And other ones, I think, work better or work um, more profoundly at the body level. They're strengtheners. They, improve the immune system. You probably know about, some of these Uña de Gato and, um, you know, and, and plants like
Pongo is another one.
Sanango, and Bovensai is often the one that we start with.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like you've done very well. You've actually acquired the skills. I think you can honestly say you're a curandero or a vegetalista. And even though you're outside the culture, you came to it from outside. This is always, with me, and I think everybody who's not within the culture, who didn't grow up in that culture, they always are confronted with the question, do I really belong here? Is this really, it's not my tradition. Am I co-opting it or am I misappropriating it? And I think uh, there's no rule about this, I mean, other people could look and be judgmental about it. What's important is your own experience. And if you feel that this is where you need to be, then that's all the validation you need. You don't really have to look beyond that to, uh, to say, I should be credited. You attain the qualifications by doing what you're doing, and you express that in your practice, what you bring to people. And whether you're a gringo or a Amazonian person or whatever you are, that those are superficial things. Again, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, uh, and we're all immersed in this biosphere, and we're, like it or not, in connection with these plant teachers. We just, some of us know it, most of us don't, but in the sense that we're all part of this web of life. And I mean, I'm like you, I'm a panpsychist. I believe that everything is intelligent, even down to the molecular quantum level. I think that mind and intelligence permeates reality. It's as fundamental to reality as the Planck constant or something like that. It's just built into reality. We just don't actually, we're not able to see it. But these medicines help to perceive, what's always there. So, so in that sense, you work with these plants and you can see that. That's, the vegetalistas will say, you mentioned that working with these plants is like being introduced to a person, and they would, I think, totally agree with that. They'd be the first to say, these plants are people, you know. They don't look like people, but they are people. They're actual entities. And of course, someone trained in the sciences and trained to be reductionist and all that would dismiss all that in a certain way, but they're missing a lot of they're missing that aspect of experience. And I think at the end of the day, the only thing we have is experience. So that's usually my response when people say, well, these spirits you encounter, all of these things, are these things real? Well, yes, they are, because you experience them. Anything you experience is real in the sense that you experience it. Then you can get down in the weeds and argue about, well, is it inside, is it outside, which are actually meaningless terms in a certain way, because there really is no inside and outside. This is something that psychedelics, again, can teach one. We're all one, right? It's all one. Uh, we have to construct this illusion of separatism in order to be functional and have a point of view and be able to do the things that we do. Uh, anyway, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. You've had these experiences, perhaps, but people who haven't may wonder, uh, what are these guys talking about? This sounds crazy, but it validates itself. The experience validates itself. And people who don't have the experience can't really understand what is being talked about here. You know, experience is the most essential thing. That, like, that's the thing about psychedelics. I mean, it's something that you cannot you cannot productively or even cannot constructively talk about until you have taken it. You know, if you have not looked beyond the chrysanthemum a few times, at least once, then you're not really qualified to say anything about those experiences, in my opinion. I mean, it's sort of like, the uh, the people that built ground the lenses for Galileo's telescope. They refused to look through the telescope, even though they built it, because they kind of understood that if they looked through the telescope, it would completely shatter their worldview, and they weren't prepared to give that up. Well, that's what psychedelics do. They disrupt your worldview so that you can replace it with a better, more more compassionate and more realistic worldview, more true to reality in a certain sense. You know, anyway, I'm off on my lecture. I don't need to do that. People are familiar with it, but you know what I'm saying.
I totally know what you're saying. I agree with everything that you said. I've not heard that term, a panpsychic. Is that
Panpsychic, yes, it's not
that up?
pantheism. You said you were a pantheist. This is
Right.
this is a little different. Panpsychism is basically a perspective that says there is that the psychic component is really a component of fundamental property of existence, and we have it. I mean, maybe it's more concentrated in complex collections of nervous tissue like human brains, but it permeates the biosphere, and I view the biosphere as an intelligent entity on the macro level and everything in it. And um, I mean, that sounds almost like a theology in a certain way, or a religious teaching. I don't view it that way. I'm actually a pretty reductionist oriented person. But my point is, if you look deeply into natural processes, you can perceive that there is intelligence there at every level, and the psychedelics are a lens. Actually, the psychedelics are a lens for examining reality in this way. It lets you step out of this default mode network, out of your reference frame, essentially, and perceive things about nature that are always there, but we're programmed not to notice. We've evolved to suppress those things, put them in the background because they're perceived as not germane to our immediate needs, which is to get something to eat and protect, you know, fend off the saber-toothed tigers that are chasing you and those sorts of things. But it's always there, and psychedelics provide uh, a special place and time to let all these defenses down, and then things come out of the background that you never noticed before. And so in that sense, I think psychedelics can be compared to a scientific instrument of a certain kind. You have a microscope or a telescope. You can probe reality with those instruments and uncover aspects of reality that you had no idea existed until you look through the telescope or the microscope. Same with psychedelics. Psychedelics is a lens for examining reality, and it's very effective, as we know.
And there's a fair amount of false positives and false negatives with this medicine as well. You know, that's something that uh, some people at the beginning of their experiences believe everything that comes to them, um, under the power of the medicine. And I think as Jose and Don Lucho said, really it maybe only 5%. I think they came up with that figure, 5 or 10%. Can you really believe? So there's a fair amount of um, stuff I tell people you just put in the trash. It's just interesting phenomenon, but don't bank on it.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, just because you have these experiences, there's no reason to completely lower your skeptical antennas or,
Right.
your critical thinking and that sort of thing. I mean, it's a balance. It's a balance. But I think what psychedelics do, and ayahuasca particularly, but all of them, they remind us of how limited our sphere of knowledge is,
All right.
much more there is that we don't know, and it's a humbling realization, but I think a very useful one. Uh, I'm gonna have to quit. I'm gonna have to end this. I've got another call coming up, but this has been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks. I've enjoyed it.
Very much. Yeah. Is there anything we didn't say that you want to make sure we say?
Well, I did want to say, that cultural appropriation that you mentioned, it's something I struggled with quite a bit at the beginning. Not only could I do this, but should I be doing this? And uh, so having the blessings of my two Peruvian vegetalista mentors was really a critical thing for me. That they felt, like that I could do this, I should do this, and really, I don't consider myself the healer. I think that these invisible beings, the plant spirits, I think that they're really the healers. I'm just assisting them. And so, does it really matter? You know, I mean, I'm Jewish guy from the Midwest. I don't know that our form really matters. That we're doing what the plant spirits can't do. They need someone to bring the medicine, serve it, sing some songs, and be loving to the people, going through.
We are the facilitators of the healing. The plants are the healers, right?
Right, right, right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm gonna have to exit, but we'll get all this up on the episode site, and really appreciate it. Excellent conversation, sir.
Thanks, Be well.
Okay, you too. We'll be in touch.